Hello and welcome to Print's Eye on China column. So this week, deep in China's Taklamakan Desert in Xinjiang, there's a warship that has never seen the sea. It sits surrounded by sand instead of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of kilometers away from where a real naval battle would ever take place. But is this really an ordinary ship? The satellite imagery doesn't say so. So recently, satellite imageries have revealed what appears to be a full-scale replica of a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke destroyer. So it is one of the most important surface combatants for America. In fact, it is actually informally called as the mother of all the naval destroyers. So the question here is, why would China build a warship in the middle of a desert? The answer is China is preparing for a fight that it hopes it never has to face, and I'll explain why and how. So, the replica appears to be a part of a wider effort to study one of the hardest platforms in modern warfare. So, how to find, track, and engage in a heavily defended naval target is something that China is looking at. So, Chinese military commentary describes it as a way of testing what is known as the kill chain. So, this is a process of detecting a target, tracking it, sharing information across different systems, and finally launching an attack. And as one Chinese commentary put it, this is not really a target, it is a replica of the enemy's main fleet in the desert. So, of course, headlines like these is a telltale sign of what China is attempting to do by building a replica of a naval destroyer in a desert, in the middle of a huge desert. So, the idea is that a modern warship cannot be understood simply by looking at its shape. A US Navy destroyer is a complex combat system. It moves, it uses advanced sensors, it has powerful radars, electronic warfare capabilities, and layers of defensive weapons designed to protect it from attack. That means a realistic test requires more than a simple outline of a ship. And Chinese military discussions around the replica argue that they need to recreate the challenges of a real battlefield. And for that, they also need uh, something that is as close as the real hardware, the real weapons. So the replica includes features linked to radar testing, launch position markings, while its track system allows it to simulate movement, creating conditions closer to a moving naval target. So some Chinese military writings also highlight the use of radar, reflective, and electromagnetic features to recreate aspects of the maritime environment in which the war could happen. That would allow missile seekers and targeting systems to be tested against a more realistic opponent. But then here, the choice of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is also very deliberate. Chinese commentary is talking about why China has made a replica of this naval destroyer. Of course, apart from being it very powerful, there are other reasons as well. So, in this context, Chinese military analyst Chang Shui has argued that this class represents a particularly challenging target because these ships are central to the US Navy carrier strike groups. They provide air and missile defense to the US while also carrying out anti submarine warfare missions. And compared with larger aircraft carrier replicas that China has built in the past, a destroyer presents a very different challenge. It is smaller, it is more mobile, and it is protected by some of the most advanced defensive systems in the world. But the goal is not necessarily just to sink the ship. Modern warfare is increasingly about reducing an enemy's ability to fight. I don't think it's now about winning, it's more about how to deter and how to defeat the enemy. When we talk about modern warfare, I think the operationalization, the agenda has also changed to a large extent to configure the enemy's ability to fight, their capabilities to for China that China is going to face in times to come, if at all there is a war. And if there is a war, it's going to be with the US in all probabilities. So, a destroyer with damaged radar, disabled missile launch systems, or compromised fire control capabilities may still be physically present, but it may no longer perform its role within a career strike group. So, this connects to a wider theme in Chinese military thinking, and that is uh, linking reconnaissance and firepower. Satellites, surveillance systems, radars, intelligence networks, and missiles all have to operate together at the same time. And also, a missile is only useful if you can first find the target and maintain a reliable track. And some Chinese analysis argue that the large number of long range anti ship ballistic missiles could create serious challenges for carrier strike group and their escorts. But those assessments depend on many factors, including the quality of intelligence, missile effectiveness, and how an opponent is going to respond. So, Chinese military discussions have presented these high fidelity targets as a major step forward. And in this context, a post on Chihu, that is China's Reddit, described such target as creating a more realistic environment for practicing tracking, linking them to coordination between China's surveillance systems and missile forces, including the much talked about famous Dongfeng missile family. But China, of course, is not alone in building military replicas. So this is one of the prominent views on the Chinese internet. The hypocrisy the Western world is generating is exhibiting when they're talking about China preparing for a war that may or may not happen. Because the idea is that in the past, the US and other major powers have also created mock ups of foreign ships, aircraft, and missile systems to test weapons, develop tactics, and also to prepare for possible conflict. So China is not doing something that is different or that is precedented. So the bigger question is not just simply about whether China is just copying any foreign or the US made weapons or destroyers. The more important question here is what happens after the copy is built. But then going on a different, a little bit similar tangent, for decades, China's ability to reproduce, to imitate foreign designs, foreign luxury goods, even buildings were often dismissed as imitation, but military replicas reveal a different purpose altogether. As in China, of course, is known as the uh, capital for making replicas for a number of things. But then when it comes to military equipment, it's a totally different story altogether. And using replication as a tool for experimentation, adaptation, and preparation is something that China is now doing. And for the People's Liberation of Army, these replicas are becoming, I would say, laboratories in a lot of way, in a lot of contexts. So they allow China to study potential adversaries, test its own capabilities, identify weaknesses, and rehearse the steps that may be needed before a conflict begins. And this is what makes the destroyer in Taklamakan Desert in Xinjiang much more important. So, of course, it's not a warship. We do not really have any idea if China is going to make any destroyer on the basis of the replica because now it's in the desert. We don't know if it is actually going to be in the real sea in the Pacific Ocean. We have no idea about it. The opacity surrounds this replica is something that is still very much intact. But what we could say for certainty is that this is an hardware, this is an experiment, and this is a laboratory for China. It is an attempt to turn observation into operational knowledge and to reduce uncertainty before the first shot is even fired. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.